Looks like we have a couple more people entering, so we will give it just a second here. Is everybody seeing my screen okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Make sure that looks like we have a couple more people. Give me just a second. Everybody wants to join in on the fun today, right? Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and get started. Wow, we're gonna talk about another calendar year end. I'm not sure where the year went, but I'm sure everybody can attest to, we're in November and it's crazy that we're going to start talking about W-2 time, but here we are. This morning, we're going to sort of break this up into segments, if you will. It's a lot to cover, in one time. So our main focus today is just basically on some changes that have recently happened, like even just some that we want to make sure that you remember from last year. And then even, what the few things that are new for this year. And then we're going to cover the year-end checklist. We're going to sort of skip over those special sort of reporting situations and break those out and talk about those in a session that Andrea is going to do in a couple weeks. So we're gonna skip over those. It's just a lot to digest in one session. So hopefully breaking those apart and talking about those specifically at another time, we can go into more details about each of those special reporting situations and do its due diligence. So we're going to skip over that today. We're also going to be covering the W-2 digital delivery just real briefly in our session today. And then we're going to move that to its own recording and do an updated recording. We have one that's, been out there from last year. And then we're also going to do a special feature article about W-2 digital delivery in the newsletter next month. So not that we're going to, not discuss those items, but we're just not going to go into much detail about those today. Just again, for time's sake and for everybody's, memory, mind sake, we're going to leave that for their own sessions. Hopefully all of you are aware that out on our wiki page, and let me just go back a couple steps here so that we can, looks like we still have a couple of people joining us, so I'm just trying to get everybody in. So out on our training and registration page, there is, whoops, let me get back to the beginning here. All right, let me start from scratch. I want to make sure that everybody knows where this is. So if you go down to our main wiki page, if you go to the SSDT meetings and trainings, and you go down to the section that says year-end meeting material, we have a dedicated section called calendar year-end. So we're going to click that. And then we have on the left-hand side, we have the USAS information that the USAS will be covered next week. And then on the right-hand side is the payroll information. So we have, broken down different resources that we just want to make sure that you're aware of. Our checklists are listed first. So the calendar year-end checklist, the W-2 digital delivery checklist, the W-2C checklist, and then the PowerPoint that we're going to talk about here in just a bit is linked here as well. And then if you scroll down, we kind of broken this down into, W-2 processing. We have the reconciliation worksheet that's a little antiquated. I'm not sure how many of you, your districts still use that. They might have something a little more, current and this was something that we had, in classic days. So they might be using something on their own, that they've created, and that's fine. We have a sample of the W-2, what that looks like, and then the explanation of each of those fields. I'm sorry, the form, the report, and then the explanation of the form. And then if we scroll down, we have all those special reporting situations. So third-party sick pay, deceased employee payment, those reimbursable employee expenses, and then the effects that those special situations have on W-2 processing. We have a document that goes through all that. And then at the very bottom are all our, the links to the actual, source itself. So the IRS, their explanation for W-2s, the publication 15A, 15B, the Ohio Department of Taxation, all the states, and then RETA, CCA, a link to the city tax rates, and then the OSDI tax rates as well. One that we did add that I just wanted to make special mention of is this publication 5137. And this, we didn't have this link before, and oh, that's weird. Sure what just happened here. Well, for some reason, sorry, I don't think I clicked edit, but it took me into edit mode. Let's try this again. Huh. I am not sure what's going on. Well, it should take you to, let me just look it up here, and I'll show you quick. I will fix that link. I'm not sure what's going on. It's taking you into the edit option instead of to the. Okay, so this is like a fringe benefit guide. So actually, someone at the ITC brought this up after or during W-2 processing last year, and we just never had it linked. And it is a really good resource as far as, paying out those different, those special reporting situations. So this is another helpful, IRS document publication that you can, use to help determine, what qualifies for withholding, how it should look on the W-2, and all those reporting, their reporting requirements. So again, I will get that fixed. I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm hoping that they're not all like that. It doesn't look like it is. Okay, good. Okay. So without further ado, we will dive right in then to the PowerPoint presentation. And again, this, it's just very, very basic here. Just a recap of a few things that happened last year, or some things that were more recent. I think some of these even got updated after we met at our calendar year meeting. So I just wanted to sort of bring you up to speed of some things that you might have forgotten in the last year. I know, I certainly forget what I've done yesterday, let alone last year. So just a reminder that on the W-2 now, if a payroll item total is 0, it will not print on the W-2. So before, even if the total was 0, It looked like this, and it looked a little, confusing to the employee. So now, that's been corrected, and it will not be, that line will not be listed with no dollar amount, like it did prior to 20, this update. The other enhancement was to the drop down on if you select the W-2 report and W-2 city to display now tax entity codes from a drop down. So before that wasn't the case, and it was a lot to enter in and remember. Now you can actually select these from a drop down. I did want to point out, I have an example here. If for whatever reason a payroll item configuration is using the same tax entity code, then those are going to be combined on one line. And before this enhancement, or when this enhancement was first released, it actually just listed one tax entity code, which was very confusing. So we did make an enhancement to the enhancement, and now, any city that has the same tax entity code, any payroll item configuration, um, will be listed, with separated by commas in parentheses here. So you're going to see all of those listed and not just the first one. So just to clear up that confusion. We were made aware that the state of West Virginia, and again, that this probably, doesn't pertain to a lot of you at the ITCs, but for those that do have the state of West Virginia that your districts need to report to, they would not accept a value in position 27 of the RE record. So before, we use that to identify a district, Medicare versus non-Medicare employees. So it would have a value of Q or R in that position. And because, the state of West Virginia is not accepting anything in that position, we made updates on our end, and that will, no longer be the case. So that's been corrected. So just a quick, reminder of that we did make that change for the state of West Virginia. And then I, just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware, it's on our checklist. We'll go through that here in a minute. But, districts can be going out at any time now and using that W-2 SSN verification option. That is a newer option. So, they can be creating that file. Once the file's created, they can go out then to Business Services Online, and they can upload that file. They have to have an account. They upload that file, and then the BSO, on their end, they verify, run that file through their system, and any errors then are going to be sent back to the district in a file, and they would then use the second option in the W-2 SSN verification program to then create the results page. So, oops, looks like we have one other person joining us. So just a quick reminder of where that's at. I'm sure you're all familiar with it because we did have this available last year. Under reports, if we go to SSDT, oh my goodness, W-2 SSN verification, the first option to create the file is that the first option listed, create submission file. So it's as easy as clicking, the generate submission file option. It creates then a file that looks something similar to this here. Again, they're going to upload that to BSO. And then when they get the file back from BSO, then they're going to choose the second option listed under W-2 SSN verification, that results report option. So They can choose to sort this by employee name or SSN, and they're going to click, choose file, browse to find that file that, the BSO has sent them, and then they'll click then, once a file's selected, they can have the option to click the Generate W-2 SSN Verification Results report. So that'll then give them a list of anything it finds, whether it be a wrong social security number, name, and they can go into the system then and make the corrections now instead of, finding out later that there was something wrong. Okay, so just a quick reminder that that is available. And then just, not a lot that's new for 2025, but a few things that are that I wanted to bring your attention to is we have a great update to the W-2 report. In the report summary section of the report, we now have some additional totals. So we have the total number of employees, the total number of W-2 forms. So again, those two numbers can be different because of the fact that for those that might have multiple box 12 information, multiple state, multiple cities, that then causes anything that causes the employee to have more than one W-2 will then cause this count to be different than the total number of employees. So now you have a true count of the actual W-2s. If you have a district that's not using ESS, and or they have not elected to have their employees receive their W-2s digitally, then this will be the count that you'll want to have them or yourself refer to, depending on who's printing your W-2s. This will be the count that you're going to want to look for when you're actually doing the printing side. Okay. If you have a district that is, electing to allow their employees to receive their W-2s digitally, then we also have a count for that. So this is the number then that would be of employees that would be electing to receive theirs digitally. So you can see here that the physical printed forms plus the digital forms equal the total number of W-2s. So I think that's a wonderful enhancement. I know we've been, uh, districts have, or yourself have been wanting a way to kind of confirm when they go to print, the number of W-2s that they should be expecting. So this gives them an actual true count. Okay, I'm just briefly going through the chat here. I'm sorry. Okay, you guys, at any time, I think you know me by now. If you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me at any time, and we'll address those questions. You certainly don't have to wait till the end. All right. Just making sure here. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. And then, right along those same lines, obviously, all of you are aware by now, hopefully, that we do have, the ability to, for those districts that use ESS, the W-2 digital delivery option is available. We have a W-2 digital delivery checklist that's out on our underneath our checklist option in the appendix, and I'll show you that here in a second, so that those districts that maybe are still looking towards moving towards that by the end of the year here, they probably want to be thinking about that pretty soon, but it steps them through the steps that needed to happen on the payroll side first, and then the ESS side to make all that happen. And again, we'll step through that real briefly. It also has at the very bottom of the checklist lots of FAQs. So, we took the commonly asked questions, those things that, have been brought up most frequently, and we've addressed those in the checklist as well. So you'll find all of that information just contained right in one place. And then the more recent update to the W-2 digital delivery is, those districts that want to print an entire W-2 file containing all of their employees, we now have that ability. So there's a checkbox, and I can just step you through that right now. We don't need to, oops. So when we go to print, and again, this would probably, this would be for your employer copies. So those districts that want to print an entire or have an entire file with all their employees available. If you go to W-2 report and submission, if you click on the forms option or the XML option, if you scroll down just past the option to select specific employees, you'll see this checkbox here that says include digital only W-2 employees. If I check this box, this is going to give me then the file of all of my employees. So again, you'll want to make sure that the sort option, is selected for the employer copies. So, maybe by name, so they're sorted in alphabetical order, and then you'll go down and check the box. And this then will give you a file of everybody that's getting a W-2 for the calendar year. Okay, the same options available through the XML option. So if you scroll down, again, you can see that this checkbox option is available here. Okay. All right. Any questions on the, little bit we've talked about those new options? And then just like I mentioned before, we are going to do a W-2 digital delivery and a video recording so that you can, go out and watch that at any time. And that'll be available here real soon, probably we're hopeful by like Thanksgiving. So the one that we have out there on our YouTube channel is a little antiquated. We've made some changes since then. So we're going to get a new fresh, hot off the press version. And we'll get that out, made available to you and make you aware that it's out there. And then, like I mentioned, we're going to be doing a feature article on W-2 digital delivery in November, so that, your users can hopefully read through that and hear all about it as well.
Lori, I have a question for you.
Sure.
It's just a quick question on the W-2s. We just
Okay.
had a Zoom meeting with our districts yesterday, because we have some that don't use RESS. And we explained
Sure.
to them if they wanted to use it just for this purpose, the W-2s and the pay slips, we
Yes.
can set them up, but it's first come, first serve, with this time of year. But our question is, are we going to have the ability, or will it automatically pull in prior year W-2s?
Yes. I think so.
Okay. I
Mary,
don't
are
want
you
to take,
on the call? Is Mary on the, I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm on the call.
Mary, can you confirm that you're more in tune with?
I do not know. That's a question that came in on a ticket, so I have it on the
Okay.
script.
Okay. All right. We can definitely follow up with you, Melissa, on that, but
Okay.
that's an excellent question. I would assume so, but we don't want to assume, so we'll find out for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Lori,
Yes.
we've had people that forgot to run the process to send their W-2s to
Mhm.
ESS, and we've ran that after the fact. So,
Yeah, and that's why I was thinking that you should be able to, because as long as they're in, the right place, the files there, um, then it's pulling through this, it's pulling through the soap service and it's there. So I wouldn't know why it wouldn't be, but we'll double check on that and make sure. But yeah, excellent point. Thank you, Vicky.
you're
Thanks,
welcome.
Vicky.
I
You're
have a
welcome.
question with the chat from Jen.
Oh,
And I took that ticket about prior year W-2s and I see them in USPS's file archive. So I'm wondering, for Jen, did you have to rerun the process?
yeah. I mean, they'll have to be in the W-2 archive in order for them to be pulled into ESS. So is that maybe the piece that is missing for you, Jen? Like you'll have to you'll have to create the file, and the file has to be in the W-2 file archive, and then that's where ESS is pulling it from. So if it's not in the W-2 archive, then it won't be in ESS. So maybe that piece helps. Um, so that's why I think, they should be fine. Like, some of you mentioned, they should be fine now, going back to your question, Melissa, because, if they run those after the fact, as long as they're in the right place, then it gets pulled into ESS. So I'm thinking it should be okay. We will double check though.
Thank you for everybody's input.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. All right. Just some follow-up options. And again, we are not going to talk about in detail the W-2C process. We're not really to that point yet. And then along with ITCM, I know that probably use ITCM, sooner maybe than the W-2C process. But what we are planning on doing again is putting together some videos, recording those, and then those will be available, to all of you at any time. So there are, some recordings and checklists already out there. So we've put those resources here. But again, we haven't revisited ITCM in a bit. As you can see, it was 2022. So we will be putting together some other additional videos that are more recent and recording those and then putting those out for you all to have. So again, we're not going to go in detail about those specific topics, but the resources are there, and we will be giving you some additional resources that are more recent. But we have checklist and so forth. So we got to get through W-2 time, right? All right. Okay. We're going to switch gears then, and we're going to talk about the actual checklist. So again, when we went to our wiki page, the very first item on listed, as a resource is this calendar year end closing checklist. So we have a blurb right up front that this is strictly one that's provided by the SSDT, but districts should be using something ITC specific if that's provided. So we have that disclaimer out there for those of you who, probably all of you at the ITC level, have sort of your own version of this, and so we have that disclaimer out there for anybody that might just go directly to ours, and hopefully that doesn't happen. We also list the important dates. So, you know, basically everything is due, all the submission files, January 31st. When it comes to RITA and CCA, those are due February 28th. And then, you know, each city might have its own deadline. So we do ask that, you know, it probably says on some paperwork that the district has been given by the city, and those could vary. So, and obviously there's so many cities, and we're not going to keep track of all of those and their due dates. So they'll want to check with the cities to, you know, meet their deadlines. We did add a note here, you know, the 31st this year, and I also think the 28th maybe, is on a weekend. So, you know, most of all of these entities, the very first, you know, when they talk about deadlines, they have a statement that says, you know, if it falls on a Saturday or a Sunday or a legal holiday, the deadline is the next business day. So this year that does come into play. So I just, you know, wanted to point that out, that it would be the next business day and not the 31st. And I think, like I said, I think February 28th might fall on a weekend as well. All right. So just to touch on a couple, you know, steps that districts can be doing now. We talked about the W-2 SSN verification, creating that file that they can then send on to, you know, the Social Security Administration for verification. And then once they get that report back, they'll import that using the results report option and then review those errors. So again, encourage districts to be doing that now before it's too late, and they have to, you know, take more steps and more time to make those corrections after the fact. Like I mentioned earlier as well, we are not going to go through all these sort of special reporting situations. We're going to have a whole session on that in the next, in 2 weeks. So not next Friday, the Friday after that. Andrea is going to review all of these special reporting situations so we can go into more detail about each of these and kind of address each of them and provide additional information, the documents we have linked to each of these, and not talk about that today. The next thing that area that districts can be reviewing now, it pertains to their OSDI W-2 abbreviations. So they will want to go to their OSDI records and, you know, on the grid, look at those and make sure that they're listed, the code is listed, and that needs to be, the code that needs to be listed is the document listed here. So if they have any questions about what that code needs to be, they would click on the link, and then we have a link to all of the various OSDI codes. You know, they can filter their grid based on payroll item configuration, and then type in under the type, you know, they can type OSDI, and that will bring up all of their OSDI records. And the W-2 abbreviation then, this field here is what we're talking about. So that needs to, can everybody see my screen? Okay, I'm gonna make it a little bigger. There we go. That needs to be, the code needs to be entered here. So based on that list that we have linked, and you can see all of these, you know, are not listed correctly. This one we're going to pretend is the first two are correct. Next is the city records. So the city records, we also want to verify that those W-2 abbreviations are listed. So, the first 6 characters are what's going to print on the employee's W-2. And if it's left blank, then it reverts to the abbreviation field. So we want to make sure that either the W-2 abbreviation field or the abbreviation field have the appropriate information. So again, you can go to the payroll item configuration grid. You would type city in the field and then review and make sure that the right city information that's under type, the right information is listed. All right. When it comes to the state of Indiana, and again, I'm not sure how many ITCs, have the state of Indiana withholding, but those that do, you'll want to make sure that, again, the payroll item configuration has the type equaling city, and it has a payee addressed with the state of Indiana. And this is the important part. We've had that come about on occasion. So the payee has to have the state of Indiana, in the address. And then for the payroll item record on the employee side, the deduction type must equal residence, and it has to have the appropriate Indiana county code. And those can be found here in the link that we've provided in their Appendix A. So, again, make sure that those codes are listed with 2 digits. So if it's, 1 through 9, make sure that those county codes are listed as, with the leading zeros. So 0, 1, 0, 2, and so forth. All right. Again, I'm not sure how many ITCs, how many of you have Indiana, districts that deal with Indiana, but we do definitely have some. So just keep that in mind. When it comes to the city tax entity code, we also want to make sure that that's in place. So in order for the electronic submission and or paper, which I'm not even sure, how many submit by paper anymore. I think most cities have moved to all strictly electronic reporting. The tax entity code has to be entered. So we want to make sure that that's entered and it's valid and it's what it needs to be. Again, if you go to the payroll item configuration grid, under the type column, you would type city, and then you want to view and make sure that for each of those city records that they have the appropriate tax entity code. And this hasn't changed. I'm sure that you guys are all aware of where that is. Doesn't even look like I have that on this test instance on that grid. I'll just open it up and show you here. All right. Okay. Moving on to some additional checks for city tax payroll items. We want to verify any RETA reporting cities. So again, we have the link to the RETA information. So if you have questions about RETA reporting, it's linked here. We want to verify for those that are reporting to RETA that on the payroll item configuration that the RETA code is entered and then the RETA appropriate description. So again, I'm sure that you're all aware of I typed city. I think before I was on OSDI and that's why I couldn't find that. Sorry. Tax entity code helps if you're on the right type of record. There it is. But if I scroll down to the bottom, Rita's at the very bottom here, you'll want the code that's defined, on their end and the description. So that's, what defines a city as being reporting to Rita. And then likewise, when it comes to the employee side, we want to make sure that all of those city payroll items have the deduction type set as employment or resident. So my suggestion is, because we've had a lot of troubles with, this getting missed, because it's required for, most city reporting. Is it being withheld based on employment or based on residence? My suggestion would be to just, have your districts go ahead and filter their grid, and those payroll items, those city payroll items. Let's just make sure that it's filled in, no matter what. It's going to cause or prevent a lot of heartache, when it goes to creating those submission files, submitting them, then there's errors because that's not defined. If we just go ahead and, make sure that that's entered for all records, then it's going to eliminate that heartache later. So if you go to the payroll item grid and you select city tax item, you can then add that deduction type under the more option, and we can easily, single click and sort this and assure that, all of the records have something, either employment or resident, filled in. Okay. We might want to maybe qualify this, and you could add like the last paid date if you wanted to get more, recent records, and not have, those that maybe are no longer with the district and they wouldn't be reported anyway. But if I add the last paid date to my grid, I can do some additional filtering, excuse me, and then, maybe generate a report if need be, and filter your grid to make sure that everybody's has that type filled in, that deduction type field. Okay, so almost, I would almost make that mandatory, just for no matter if they're reporting to Rita or CCA. Lots of cities need that as well. So just, make it known that field needs to be entered for any city record. All right, when it comes to CCA, of course, they have to be a little more, require a little different reporting on their side. So again, if a city is reporting to CCA, we want to, on that payroll item configuration screen, we want to make sure that the code is entered there, followed by the CCA description, and then the report to CCA checkbox is marked. So again, just to hop over to that payroll item configuration, and if I bring up a city record, here's the CCA information here. So the code, the description, and then report to CCA. So that's what we're talking about when it comes to the first information here that's listed here. Now, there's some additional things that we want to make sure happen. So we spell this out here. That's in regards to any district that reports to CCA must make sure that they review all the appendices, so A, B, and C, and the city codes have to be entered on these cities, based on how they have them listed in the different appendix. Okay, so we've kind of broken this down here. If, they are a CCA city that's listed, if that CCA city is listed in Appendix A, then they need to, enter the CCA code, CCA city name, and then check the box. If it's not in Appendix A, but it's in Appendix B, then we need to enter the CCA code, the CCA city name, but we're not going to check the report to CCA box. If the city's not in Appendix A, B, or C, then we're going to leave the CCA code blank. We're going to enter a valid city name, but we're not going to check the report to CCA box. So this kind of spells out, the different scenarios and finding those cities then in those different appendix. All right. The CCA name should be entered based on the link that we have here. So that's how the city name should be entered on the payroll item configuration record. All right. And again, we want to make sure that on the payroll item itself, the employment or residence box for all the employees, we have something selected. Okay. Along with their address. And I know last year this was a heartache for lots of districts. So we've provided a link there to what CCA is expecting the address to be. So we can, verify addresses that way. Again, we understand that they're just not, they're just a little more difficult in their reporting than other cities. All right. That is city reporting and all those different areas that we can be checking when it comes to the reporting city information. Next is other state. So again, I'm not, sure how many districts or ITCs this affects, but we do have out of state information that needs to be reported as well. So we want to make sure that, those payroll item records, we have the appropriate value in the state ID field. So that's what's identifying that gets placed on the submission record. So we want to make sure that the state ID field is entered on the payroll item configuration. And I'm sure you guys are all aware of where that is. It doesn't look like I have another state, but you are probably aware of where that state ID field is on the payroll item configuration. So just make sure it's entered. Excuse me. When it comes to HSAs, we want to make sure that the annuity type is set to other. And please have your districts check this. If you have any districts that are new to this year, just having an HSA put in place, please go out and have them verify and make sure that this annuity type is set to other. In the past, we've had cases where that's not been set up correctly, and it is, either it wasn't set up as the right type, or the annuity type wasn't set to other, and that obviously causes all kinds of heartaches for the district. So we can hopefully, from when it comes to W-2 reporting, get those reporting issues out of the way and fix it sooner than later. So go out and verify those HSA records if you have districts that are new and having HSAs put in place this year. Again, we want to just, check and make sure that the W-2 configuration screen is set up correctly. So there might be changes in the fact that maybe the districts you've moved away from, you at the ITC level submitting their files on their behalf, and this year they're going to submit their own. So we want to make sure that that district will submit their own W-2 checkbox is checked or unchecked appropriately. There's also an option to just include the last 4 digits of an employee's social security number. So this is going to be on the forms. So the forms and the XML output option. If this is something they want to move to, you're aware that that option is out there for them. And then make sure that the company information, the contact information, the submitter information is all entered and it's correct. So again, if we go to system configuration and we go down to the W-2 configuration option, here's where you'll find all of those, that information we were just talking about, those options. The district will submit their own W-2. They only want the last 4 digits of their social security number printed. Obviously here's where we're going to, enable that W-2 digital delivery option that we're not going to go into a lot of detail right now. And then the company contacts and submitter information is down below. So all of this needs to be obviously entered. It needs to be accurate. It prints on the forms. We want to make sure it's included in the submission files. We want to make sure double and triple check that that's accurate. Okay. Just out of curiosity, like how many ITCs that are on today are still printing for their districts? I know we have some. I was just curious as to how many.
Neonet prints for them.
Neonet's printing. Okay.
Access prints and distributes too.
Access. Okay.
Neoman also does.
Neoman. Okay.
Connect
Yeah.
also
It sounds
does.
like, okay. Sounds like the same, maybe the same that we had last year. I just was curious if anybody moved from submitting last year to, or I'm sorry, printing and submitting last year and are not doing that this year. But it sounds like it might be the same as last year. Okay. All right. And then step 13 is just to run the OPSI report. So, it's important if districts want this report, for later, that they run this now. So we have this on, the checklist. If they don't have the report definition imported, you can find that in the reports, the public shared reports library. So you can go out there, they can import this, and then they'll have it for future years. But we do recommend that they run this now. Save a copy of it so that way, when it comes time when they truly need this information, we have it, because it's all based on, this W-2 reporting information. So make sure they run that now. All right. Any questions about the kind of stuff that they can be looking at now, verifying, checking, running, before we move any further? Again, this hasn't changed from past years, but I know we do have some newer ITC staff, and again, like I mentioned earlier, we do this once a year and we forget. So it's good to kind of step through it together, and kind of brings all those wonderful memories back, right, of last year. All right. Month end, it's the same as every other month end closing. So we have a link to our checklist for month end closing here, as well as quarter end. We have a link to the quarter end checklist here. If districts, need to start that January payroll, and they're not ready to run or think about W-2 processing, it's okay. We have the steps here. They will simply leave their December posting period open. And then we're going to create the January posting period for 2026, and we're going to make that current. And then we're going to, they can continue processing their first pay in January. So December does not have to be current in order to come back and run your W-2 processing. So we have a little note here, but I know we get that question, and you probably get that question a lot. It is scary. It's kind of, unsettling, like, oh my gosh, am I really going to be able to come back and do this? Yes, they can. So they just leave December open, and then they can move on, continue their processing like they normally would to start their first payroll in January. And then when they're ready to do their W-2s, they're going to come back, and they can start then at step 16. For those districts that are ready to just continue processing, they want to, keep going, get their W-2s ready, out, printed, they can just continue on with step 16 here. So we have a note here, step 16 through 23. These are all repeats of the steps above that we just talked about. So steps 2 through 12 in the checklist. But, there might be a chance that maybe they missed something, in one of those steps, or they said, I didn't have time to look at this. Now, if they're ready to start their W-2 processing, we repeat it here. They can, just double check everything, make sure that they have these steps that we've already talked about completed. And then if they, are ready to move on, they can move on to step 24. Again, this is step 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. All of these are those special W-2 reporting situations. Again, we're going to move past these and not talk about those right now. We're going to move down to then actually processing your W-2, eventually get to your W-2s, the forms, and then the submission files. So the very first thing districts are going to want to do, and hopefully they've been sort of running these, their W-2 report, at least on a quarterly basis, so that they can, be checking those errors as they're closing their quarter, and getting those checked and verified and worked through. But they're going to want to obviously run this again. And this time they can check the box that says, to create a report for employees with errors only. And we have that specified here. And I'm sure you're all aware of that option, but just going to the report here. If I go to report and submission, there's an option here that says report employees with errors only. They'll check this box, and that's going to give us a report then of any errors the system finds. So we want to make sure that those, those errors are verified. It could be, that they're valid, and that's okay. We just want to check them, and those that need to be corrected get corrected. In the W-2 report and submission chapter in the documentation, I'm going to take you over there quick. We do have a section that if I scroll down here, I thought I had that on this. Yep, I do. My computer's possessed here. We have a section in the chapter that outlines the errors with, most of them have possible areas to look at and, places to go to verify or look at it points you in the right direction, basically. So, anytime you have questions, go out here and check the information that we have included in the error message. And hopefully that'll give you, a good start, or again, like I mentioned, a place to look at to begin researching what could be causing the problem. So we'll want to run this report over and over and over, until it's error-free, or at least the errors that are listed on the report are valid and okay to ignore. Then we're going to go and we're going to run, the report as a whole. So we're going to uncheck that report, generate the report for errors only, and we're going to generate a report for everybody. So again, districts have all kinds of ways to balance this and, make sure that, everything looks correct. We do have that balancing tool that we've posted out on the wiki page that districts can use, and to help them balance. Most generally, districts have something that they use, and every district is so different. So I'm sure they have something in place as a means to balance, but they'll want to obviously double check, triple check this, look it over. They can run this as many times as well to assure that it's good. Again, just a special mention of, we have that document that outlines what effects, special W-2 reporting situations have on W-2 processing. So hopefully that will help as well. How it touches or doesn't touch certain areas for taxing purposes. So that's a nice supplemental document that districts can refer to maybe help them look at why something looks the way it does. Next, we're going to move on to the print file. So again, based on whether you're using the file that comes out of state software, or Edge's accountability, there's kind of separate steps for each of those options. So if you're, wanting to create a form because you're using our system to print those, then you'll go to the W-2 mailable forms option. And we have, all of the different options listed here. Pay particular attention to the sort option. We want to make sure that, they select the sort option that matches how they want their employee copies to be printed. So maybe it's, easier to distribute them a certain way. We want to make sure that they're sorted that way for that reason. I'm not going to go through all of the various options in the program. Once then you, click then to generate those, then that in turn creates the job. And then you'll go then to the W-2 form output files view, and you will see that job listed. So that's where you would print then the file is going to be located for you to print. So again, just stepping you through this real quick. While we're talking about this, we've had a couple questions about printing W-2s on like plain 8.5 by 11 paper. Just keep in mind that at this time, we do have a JIRA issue to make that happen in the future, but at this time, we don't have a way to print on 8.5 by 11 paper. So, there's no way to get the employee address printed on any form other than the forms or XML option. So, we're going to have to we have to use those, 4-up form sealable forms at this time. All right, I'm just going to quickly create this. And like I said, you'll get once you generate the form, then you're going to get the message that says that the forms have been created, and you can see this in the W-2 form output files view. So if I would go back to W-2 reports and this time select the W-2 forms output files, you can see here, it gives me the option then to download that file. I can then, submit that file to the printer. And that would be my file my print file. Okay. All right. Again, now that, we have the ability to match, those numbers, you can then, make sure that the number of forms that you printed matches the form total on your W-2 report. Okay, so nice feature there that we're able to finally, just kind of check that box and make sure, double check and make sure that all the W-2s that should have been printed got printed. If you're using Edge's accountability, you're going to use the XML option. So really, that's the only difference here. And then you would then either use that file to submit to your printer to print, or I'm, thinking that you at the ITC level, have means to get that from the district, whether it be go out and, grab that from the file archive, or, them letting you know that the file's there, however you have communicated with your districts to get that information or let them know that they're ready to be printed. Okay. When it comes to creating the print file for cities, again, it depends on, if you're using Edge's accountability or you're using, the file coming out of our system, you would use the forms option if you're using, our print file. And then again, it's, not any different than what we just talked about here. You're going to use that then file. You would generate the file, go to the forms output file, and then, use that file to print your city copies. Make sure, one thing that just kind of popped out at me when I'm scrolling through our list here, is to make sure that when you're submitting the file to be printed, make sure you're using the option that says actual size. So that can be, defaulted to something else. And maybe the first time you go to print a file, or your district prints a file, that can cause your forms to not print like you expect them to. So make sure that that option is set to actual size. And then it should default. I think once you set it the first time, it defaults unless there's some kind of updates that happen on your computer or something, but that has caused issues in the past. So just make sure that that option set. And then if you're again using Edge's accountability, you'll actually use the same XML file that we just talked about in step 36. And then there should be a way, I think in Edge's accountability, I'm not super familiar with that, and it's been a bit since I've seen it, but there's options you choose for city copies versus employee copies, employer copies. So I'm sure that there's some way to, when you run that through their program, their software that denotes what kind of copy you're printing. So you would use their options provided in on their side of things to print that. All right. Okay. When it comes to the employer copies, again, we talked earlier about, excuse me, that ability now to, regardless if you're an ESS district that's allowing, digital delivery or not, you do have the ability to print a file containing all of your employees. So you would check that box then that says include digital W-2 digital delivery, I think is how it's worded. Let me go back to that. So if I am in forms, this option here, include digital only W-2 employees. That's how it's worded. If I check that box, that's going to give me a file containing everybody. So again, make sure that they select the right sort option. And we have that, bolded here, how they want their employer copies. They can then use the forms option or the XML option and print their employer copies. And again, if you're, using ESS, we want to make sure that that box is checked so that that would have be a file including everybody and not just those getting a paper copy of their W-2s. Okay.
Hey, Lori.
All right.
Lori.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yes.
So
No, you're fine.
we use Edge's accountability program to do the W-2s because
Mhm.
state software, you can't like print all the cities at once. So a district would have to go in and do city by city by city.
Mhm.
So we've received some pushback on that. So
Okay.
that's the reason we use the Edge accountability. So with that, if someone has, I'm not quite sure how to ask the question. So if someone has opted for, 3 employees to be digital, we print the employer copy from the Edge accountability as well. So however they generate that first XML file is how their employer copies are going to be printed as well. You know what I'm saying? So if on the XML file, if they don't want the digital ones to be printed, obviously, then their employer copy is also not going to be printed unless they generate 2 files.
Yeah, I was going to say they're going to have to generate 2 files. So they're going to have to generate their city copies, kind of like we have it in the steps outline, generate their city copies and
Yeah.
then generate their employer copies. Right?
Well, I was just telling you why we use the Edge accountability, but I just mean on regular, on the employer copies of the W-2, they would have to generate 2 files if they wanted a printed copy of the employer copy.
That is correct. Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Because on the
Okay.
regular file,
Only include.
it'll exclude those digital copies. But then if they want that employer, then they're going to have to generate a second file.
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Yep.
And so we would have 2 files then to process for each district.
Yeah, so you're going to have, one obviously with the box unchecked for your city copies, and then you're going to have one with it checked for your employer copies. So you have everybody.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And so, yeah, and I'm making a note. So the main pain point is because you can't print all the cities at once, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only reason that we use the Edge accountability is because we can print all the cities at once and sort by city.
Got it.
Because some of our districts have a lot of cities that they report to. So, I mean, they don't want to have to run that file, 10, 12 times.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Is anybody else using Edge's accountability basically only for that reason? Is anybody else? We will bring that up with the development team. And maybe that's something we can look at
Oh, that would be
changing for
great.
next year. We'll see what we can do.
All right. Thanks, Lori.
Yeah, of course. Okay. I'm gonna scroll back down. So, once we have all the printing side of things done, and if only it was that easy, right? We just check a box and we are ready to move on to creating the submission files. So first is to create the federal submission file. So again, really, the options change slightly, but we're going to select the submission option within the W-2 report and submission option. And then you can obviously see, like I said, the options change slightly. And most of this information should populate automatically based on the W-2 configuration information that's entered. So that's why it's so important that, that information is accurate, it's correct, because it's automatically being populated here. And then obviously it's going to get included in the submission file, which, so we want it assured that it's correct. But all of the options are listed here in underneath the step. There is an option to create a file summary report. So we do, suggest that that gets printed and saved, or at least saved somewhere, in a folder somewhere, or somewhere that they can easily, access that. It is also in the file archive, but then they're going to create the actual file. So there's an option that says generate SSA W-2 submission file. They're going to click that. And then you're going to, they'll save that file somewhere on their computer. Again, we do, advise them to right click on that file and then send that to a compressed zip folder. That kind of reduces, that's like per the file specifications. They just encourage you to compress that so it's not as large of a file when it does get submitted. And then, basically we just ask, once those submission files are created, go out to that calendar year-end bundle in the file archive and just make sure that under 2025 that those files, I'm sorry, all those reports and submission files are there. So before we go any further, let's just make sure that everything looks like it should, so that we don't have any issues, when we go back and look for those. All right. Again, if you're, excuse me, a district that is, submitting on your, an ITC, I'm sorry, that's submitting on your district's behalf, you probably have, some kind of plan in place to either get those files to you or, go out and let you know at least that they're there, and you can report those or have those when it comes time to report them. And there's also an option on the BSO website for you to run the file through and assure that it's gonna, be air free. So we have those steps available as well for you to go out and then run that file through, and the AccuAge, and make sure that there's, not going to be any problems when you actually go then, and then to the next step and actually upload that file, and truly submit it. Okay. When it comes to the Ohio submission, there's a W-2 states option tab. So you would select Ohio. Again, just to refresh our memory here. We're going to select Ohio from this W-2 states option. And again, I'm not going to, read through all the options, but a lot of that information, again, defaults from the information on the W-2 configuration screen. So, once it's double checked, triple checked, it should be right here as well. So just make sure that that's good. And then you're going to want to, again, create that W-2 submission file summary report, like we talked about with the federal file. And then, you can then generate the W-2 submission file. Again, save that file somewhere on your computer. Go to the file archive, make sure that in the file archive, you now see those Ohio files that were created. And it, again, districts, if you're an ITC that's submitting on their behalf, they're going to you have means to get that file from them to report. You can also run this file through AccuWage on BSO's website and check that for any errors. So we encourage you to do that as well. And then you're going to upload that file then to the Ohio Business Gateway. We have a link to that as well. I'm sure that, everybody's familiar with that website. When it comes to the other state submission files, we have those listed here, the requirements, and then, all of the various states listed, below. You would go to W-2 state option again, and then instead of Ohio, you're going to select the state that you want to create the submission file for. Again, when you select a different state, the options change slightly. So you're going to see that Indiana's looks, slightly different than West Virginia's, and so forth. All right. Does anybody, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through each of these states because I'm not sure how many it truly applies to. But before I just skip over it, does anybody have a new state that they're reporting to for the first year? Because I can definitely go into more detail about that particular state for you if you would like. Is everybody reporting to the same states that they have in the past?
Lori, this is Andrew from
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Hey, can I
Yes.
discuss a question, bigger picture question about other states? I was talking to some other people about this.
Yeah, sure.
About my understanding is that if the state touches Ohio, there's like a reciprocal agreement, and that's
Mhm.
clearly you've got it set up that way that all the states that touch are here. But if you've got some other state, my understanding is you actually should withhold Ohio and you don't have to withhold that other state. Is that true? We're having some people with, hey, this person, military, and they're allowed to claim the state they live in, or, more, you've got people working in other states. So I didn't know. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's say Iowa or something, I don't know.
yeah, I'm almost positive you're correct with that you're withholding Ohio, and not the like the state they live in, but I am going to write that down, Andrew, and we will revisit that because I don't want to speak about tax law without
Yeah, and
getting
I was
some.
just kind of trying to feel that out and see if any other ITC
Yeah.
had that. Obviously, if they're one of the
Yep.
ones you have programmed, which is, super thankful that those are all just ready to go.
I will. We can double check with that. So Layla. Yep. Okay. If anyone else has anything to add with that regarding Andrew's question, comment, statement that they would like to share, that would be fine. Otherwise, I'll look into that a little bit further and see what we can find out as far as how that law is written? That's a great question. All right. We will move on then to city submissions. And again, you know, as we sort of just touched upon a little while ago, we are gonna, you know, create a submission file based on, you know, each city. So you will go to the W-2 report and submission option, and you would select the W-2 city options tab. So again, you know, if I go back to, I'm in W-2 report and submission, I would select the W-2 cities option. Maybe. It's taking a little bit here, it's thinking. There we go. And then as we talked about before, you know, we now have this tax entity code drop down. So it gives me, and this is a set of test files, and only the first 3 here are set up sort of correctly or make sense. So just disregard the ones below that. But you can see here, you know, we could select by tax entity code, and then we would create the report. And again, you know, we have the ability now to generate a true report for the city, information that's being reported, and then we would create the submission file for that particular city. Okay. So this kind of steps you through all of that. And again, you know, once you create the file, those steps are the same. You would, you know, save that somewhere on your computer. Make sure that, you know, if you go to the file archive, make sure that those reports are out in the file archive under the year-end, calendar year-end report folder. And then you would submit that, you know, however the city wants that information to be submitted to them, you would go to that particular, you know, report that information for that particular city. Next is, you know, submitting and creating your CCA information. So again, you would go to the W-2 report options tab, and you would select submission. And then at the very bottom, you're going to see the RETA and CCA options. Why things are taking just a little longer here. I'll come back to that. We can keep talking. So again, you know, you would again assure that, you know, all the information that we've discussed many times now is correct. You can generate then that file summary report and save that, and then generate the submission file. And then that would create your W-2 CCA file. Again, make sure that those, you know, as you're stepping through all of these different parts, you know, we do encourage go out and make sure that those are being copied into the file archive, because it is so important that those, you know, get retained and are there for future reference. So once the file's created, then, you know, somehow, whether it be, you know, at the ITC level or, you know, at the district, they're going to go to CCA and then follow their instructions to get that file uploaded. All right, now it's up and so again, once I select submission, if I scroll down to the bottom, you can see here the RETA option and the CCA option, okay, and the report options. Same thing for RETA. You know, instead of selecting CCA this time, we're going to select the RETA options, you know, create those reports, create, the submission file, save that W-2 RETA file, verify everything's in the file archive as it should be, and then we're gonna submit that to the RETA Ohio. The last couple steps here on the checklist, I'm not sure how many are running that year-to-date report anymore, but it is a nice kind of one-page, summary of the employees, payments, their deductions, all of those good things, nice things that they can have record of. So if this is a report that districts are still wanting to provide to their employees, they can run that at this time. If I go to reports, did I miss it? Oh, the very last one. My goodness, I didn't have enough coffee yet. All right, so the year to date, you can change the title. So if they would want to, title this like 2025 year to date report, they can. They can sort it by, maybe how they distributed their W-2s or created their W-2 file if they like. It'll, default, make sure it's 2025. And then here's where you have the option to exclude or include compensation information. If they would want to include archived employees for whatever reason, they can. If they want to run it for specific employees, they can, specific pay groups, specific job statuses. They can, right now it's, by default, including active and inactive jobs. And then when you generate that report, and this is probably not going to have anything in it. Nope. Because these files are so old. Just to give you a look, if for those that may or not be familiar with it, I'll just generate it here quick. So I, included or check the box to include, go back up here, to include compensation information. So you can see here, it lists, compensation information, the payroll item information, and then some totals at the bottom of all of those. Okay, benefit information, I forgot to mention that. So it's a nice summary of, basically everything, employee might need for maybe tax purposes, just providing them those figures all on one piece of paper.
Lori,
Then, yes.
I just ran that in our instance, and it's also going to be a good tool because it breaks it down by pay type for the OT, if people used OT for overtime for this year, since nothing's in place yet for that new law.
Yeah, okay, that's a very good point. So the only piece that might be missing is if for those that aren't using overtime, if they're using miscellaneous, this could also, it might give them not be the exact figure that they need, but it might sort of give them some point of reference. So those districts that are using miscellaneous instead of overtime, it is going to show miscellaneous, but it will obviously not, there's no way to know if that's all overtime or, if they were paid some other miscellaneous payments, then that's not going to be an actual figure. But that's a great point. Melissa, thank you. I will make note of that, and that might be a place to start for sure.
Lori, I have a question on that same concept. We are creating
Sure.
reports for our districts based on kind of how they're doing their overtime for this year. So some
Okay.
obviously use miscellaneous pay, some use the OT pay type and that.
Mm-hmm.
Is anybody doing anything else, I guess was my question, for this overtime rule change?
Hey Brenda, I've gotten some. Have you seen out there where the way that they're saying it is any reasonable faith effort to provide this to the employee? Have you seen those words from the IRS?
No, I guess I haven't seen that specifically, but I knew there was no penalty for not providing anything. I found that.
I, so the way I've seen is it's just any reasonable faith effort, and because of the vagueness of that, I have some people saying, hey, like, we use that description field on the pay slips, like when they're doing OT, like we always are saying what they do, right? So like uh, I have some people that are kind of hoping that the pay slips are the reasonable faith effort and they're going to do nothing other than that because they've been noting it the whole year. Um, Obviously, if they weren't communicating it in any way to the employee, that doesn't count as reasonable faith. But yeah, I'm hearing things like that, like, hey, like we already told you what your overtime was for the year. That's good enough, you know?
I think the average person isn't going to know that the law either is that the only piece that's tax free is the half time, not
Yeah.
the straight time. So I think that's going to be an issue for people. But yeah, I mean, we've got districts that say, yes, we're going to give them a report because they're asking. So we're working on reports. But some of our districts, use miscellaneous pay type. There's blended rates. There's nothing in that description that says overtime. And I said, so the best I can do is get you a report of all your miscellaneous pay types. You figure it out. Now we're doing a report by pay group so they can kind of filter it down, and account code. So if they're doing it by account code, they could pull certain account codes, but that's about the best that we've got.
Hey,
So
Brenda.
that's why I was curious if anybody else was doing anything.
I had suggested to my districts when this came out to start creating a spreadsheet that when they go to pay that overtime, that they just kind of like list all of their employees that would qualify for that, and then just kind of like create their own Excel spreadsheet by pay date of what those overtime amounts are, so that maybe they can
And
summarize it at the end of the year.
we did that same type of thing too. So I have some keeping spreadsheets, some who've asked for specific reports, some who are, like Andrew says, are doing nothing, which,
Well,
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
oh, I was just to say, to clarify, they're only doing nothing because they think that the pay slips themselves might already have
Right,
what's
right.
needed. There's actually a CPA firm actually up by you, Brenda, that one of our districts uses, and they sent me something from them, and it's like basically, now this is like for everything, not just schools, and it talks about how in 25 it says that you could use box 14, but it's voluntary, and it just says use any reasonable method. But then it also talks about what they think is going to be required in 26. I mean, this isn't the IRS. I put it in the Zoom chat. So,
Right. Yep, I
it
see it.
has that disclaimer. But this seems like I don't know, maybe you have districts that use that firm too, because it's definitely, it's like in Defiance and like it's up closer to you. Yeah, every time I've heard somebody talk about this, it's like I heard, yes, it has to be box 14. I've heard things about letters, like needing to furnish letters to employees, but then the payslip thing, and I've heard it's all been all over the place from people from my districts that also seem very confident about each of the different things that they've told me.
Yeah, it's definitely been a hot topic, right? Like, and just to sort of like reassure everybody, for 2026, there will be an easy way to, comply with the way that it has to be reported. The development team, we've been talking with them about, like, we've had many discussions about overtime, about blended rate overtime, and how all this is going to be tracked, how it can be paid differently. So I think you're going to be excited about changes that are going to be happening for next year when it comes to the payment side and the reporting side, and not all of the, like, we're still in the planning stages, so it's not like I can say this is how it's going to work, because I don't really know the details yet, but that is going to be happening, so that for 2026, I think their lives are going to be your lives, their lives, which in turn makes your lives, right, easier. So exciting. Like, I think they're gonna love it.
Hey, Laurie, it's
When do
Brian
you-
at Access.
oh.
Are you saying that that'll be in place starting in January then?
It will.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Yeah, the development team knows that, we have to start this, January 1st. So they're like, nose to the to the computer and getting things put in place, a plan put in place, and getting, ready to get everything changed to make everything happen. And it's a huge undertaking. So yeah, kudos to them. They understand it's been painful. Overtime, blended rate overtime, now reporting it. So they're working very hard to make it easier for everybody. Okay. Any other questions or comments when it comes to the overtime part? Yeah, Melissa, thank you for bringing that to our attention, because I do think that I made note of that. I do think that this will be helpful, a resource for them to point their employees to. So great find.
You're welcome.
Okay. Coming down to the last steps here to wrap things up. If, a district is using ESS, then as we, mentioned briefly in the very beginning, we do have to create that file, that then gets placed, out in the W-2 archive, for, ESS to go find. So to do that, we're gonna, go to W-2 reports. We're gonna go to W-2 archive individual forms, and then use that option then to, schedule the job. And then, once the once the job has been complete, you can see that in the job scheduler. You should be able to go to the W-2 archive option, and then you'll see that that folder, that file, for 2025, is out there. And again, that's what ESS is going to look at to pull, and connect to, and for districts then to log in on the ESS side and see their W-2. Keep in mind, we've had a lot of questions, and we'll sort of address this a little bit in more detail when we do the recording for W-2 digital delivery. But there's been a lot of discussion about, what happens if an employee resigns, mid-year, they no longer have access to their ESS account. They have a role now, that they can just log in to see their W-2 information. So that's available. But keep in mind, when it comes to the payroll side and like the treasurer's office, that W-2 archive file is going to contain all employees. So it's not excluding in just providing those that have, those districts that are on ESS, or those districts or those employees that are on ESS that have, signed up to receive their W-2 digitally. So any district can go into the W-2 archive and they can pull up an employee's W-2. So, that part hasn't changed. So in my mind, if an employee is not able to receive their W-2, the treasurer's office, I understand it's gonna, involve a phone call and phone calls after phone calls and after phone calls can get, not the most fun for a district's treasurer's office, but they can go into that W-2 archive and print a copy of the employee's W-2. So think of it sort of in the way that an employee loses their W-2. They still have access to get that file, get a copy of that to get to them. So it's not, there's a way around it. It might not be the most user-friendly to print out, multiple W-2s for those that have left. But hopefully there's not, we might not be talking about a whole, district of people. It might just be a handful. So another suggestion somebody had, which I think is a really good option, is if you go to the employee grid, and again, we'll probably circle back and mention this when we do the recording, but on the employee grid, thought I had this already selected. You can obviously add the W-2 digital, those two fields to the grid. And it might not be a bad idea. You could even use like the last paid date. So if we add that as well, you could filter based on the last paid date. You could see then real quickly who has elected to receive their W-2 digitally. And then, based on like, the last paid date or, a termination date or something, you could see then who might fall into that category. So you might, have a handful of calls from these people because they're no longer with the district. They left mid-year and they elected to receive their W-2 digitally. So that's like a quick, easier way to see who might be affected. Okay.
Lori, I have a quick question about that. I'm so sorry
Sure.
to bother you.
You're not bothering me at all.
We had a couple of people leave the RITC this past year, and I went in and changed their login to their personal email address instead of our Active Directory. And I gave them the W-2 and pay slip role. Now, the first time they log in to maybe go see something like that, will that acknowledgement pop up for them as well? Because they do have a role?
Mary, do you know how that will work by any chance? Not trying to put you on the spot, but I know
Yeah, I
we
was
kind of
just trying,
tweak that
trying
a
to
little
think through
bit. So
that.
I'm trying to think through how that might work. We can
I'll have to test it. Yeah.
we can definitely find out. That's a good point.
So they still have the same login username, but a different email address.
Yeah. Well, their login username, I did switch it to their personal email address because it was currently their Active Directory account. I couldn't put their work email because as soon as they leave, we disconnect that.
Yeah.
So I make sure I get their personal email address before they leave so I can get that. So if they need to verify or anything, it will go to their personal email. And then one last question, what role or roles can see the district W-2 acknowledgement in ESS? Because there's that grid there for some people who may not know that shows who's accepted and who's logged in and accepted it and who hasn't. Is that just district manager?
That will just, the actual grid, yeah, it would be the district manager, any admin role.
Okay, thank you.
But Melissa, do you have an example person that you can just send to me in a ticket?
Sure.
And then I can check that, but I also want to say you don't have to change their username because that's not attached like it was in kiosk.
Okay,
The actual employee ID is what controls everything that's attached to that person.
okay.
So you
Good to
don't really
know.
have to change that. You could leave that alone. But if you need to change the email, then you should be able to do that. But I'll test it out for you.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you, Mary.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
No, we've changed a little of that of late, so I wanted to get some clarification on how that worked. Thank you, Mary. And I thought I was going to show exactly what you were just describing, Melissa, about the grid that you could look at. And for some reason, this was working before 9 o'clock and now it's not. So, and for sake of time, I'm just going to move on if that's okay. I was going to show what you were talking about with the grid stuff in ESS, but we can address more of the ESS side when we do our W2 digital delivery recording. Okay, so just wrapping things up here. Once we've provided then, or created, I'm sorry, that W2 PDF file for ESS, we've, that's out in the file archive. It's good. We can move on then to actually closing the December posting period. So when we close, when we select that option to close December, it's going to then in turn create all of these reports that we've listed here in step 48. So we just ask that you go out, or districts go out and, one last time go to the file archive, and they would see then the additional reports that we have listed there. So, just preventing some issues, needing these in the future and them not being there. Make sure that they're closing posting periods on a regular basis. Once they're done with that month, get in the habit of closing those and not leaving those open for, we all know that there's been offenders and they've left periods open for multiple months, and that can cause some heartache when they go to, need reports for certain months and they all look the same and they're not accurate and all that good stuff. So just need to get in the habit of closing those on a regular basis. All right, we have ran way longer than I expected, and you guys probably wanted to be on, so I apologize for that. Are there any questions before we wrap things up today and finish up and get ready to start another calendar year end? So I should check the chat here.
Lori, this is probably a ridiculous question, but just because our districts seem to get confused. So whether they are on ESS or not, they should still run that W2 archive to get create the W2 PDF for ESS.
Mhm.
They should
Mhm.
still run that anyways, whether they're on ESS or not.
That is correct. Yeah, we
Okay.
probably should make that a little clearer in that step. Vicki, that's a valid point. So I'm going to make a note here and we will just kind of make that, I think our intent was create the file, especially it's especially needed for ESS purposes. You know what I mean? So
Right.
we'll reword that to make it a little more clear that yes, run it. And if you're using ESS, that's the file that's being ESS is connecting to look at to make those available to their employees. So we can make that a little clearer. Making a note here, and we can certainly get that updated. Thank you
All right.
for
Thank,
that.
yep, thank you.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, any other questions before we wrap things up? Thank you so much for everybody's, attention this morning and time. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your Friday, a wonderful weekend. I think I saw possibly snow in our area, like Sunday or Monday or something. I'm like, I guess it's winter. I guess fall's about to be in the rearview mirror. So everybody stay warm, and I'm sure we'll talk to you or see you all soon. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one.
Thank you.